Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got James on, and James is a software developer. Hi, James.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Fantastic. James, let's jump straight in then. Do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Hi, I'm James. I'm a software developer, which basically means I spend a lot of my time writing code, building software at technology companies. I've been doing it 10 years, so kind of worked at companies of all different sizes, from small startups that have done well, small startups that have done not so well, big companies, media companies, made software for banks. So kind of done all of it really, the broad spectrum. And currently, I'm working at a place called Mixcloud, which does audio streaming. I'm a software developer there, which currently means I'm working on building a bit of kit, a bit of software that allows DJs to live stream to their fans in the browser.
Oh, wow.
So it's all quite varied, but yeah, all quite fun.
Yeah, we've been sort of talking to quite a few developers because we've only just sort of discovered this world of developing and,
Mm.
all the careers within it. And it's such a cool and up and coming sort of career path for everyone. And I wondered how you found sort of working in startups. And it's more of a fluid career than I think most people, when they think of a career, they still think in their head, oh, I'm going to be here for maybe 20 years. But developers, you tend to move around a bit more, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's definitely the nature of the industry. It's fast moving and it's changing a lot, which was definitely what drew me to it when I was kind of racking my brains. You know, when you're a bit younger and you have to make a decision on what to do. That idea of tech and how quick it was moving, that definitely was something that pulled me into it. And that was my plan. I was actually going to move around as much as possible and try and do everything, which I've kind of done in the end. But I was started at a few startups, but then ended up at the BBC, and then kind of got stuck there is the wrong word. I loved it. It kind of stuck to me, and so I kind of was almost doing that like not developer thing, which is stay in one job for like 5 years,
Mm.
and I was loving that. But eventually, yeah, you just see so many interesting things going on in the tech world that it's like, oh, that looks exciting. I might have to go and try and work on that. So there's definitely a lot of movement.
What was it like to work in some startups? You mentioned you worked in some startups, some that went well, others that didn't. What's that
Mm.
kind of that culture like?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of lucky that the ones that didn't go so well were early on in my career, so I wasn't too bothered by it. I was like, it's kind of the early places that I worked. I just wanted a job. So out of uni, you kind of just like you need your first bit of experience. So I was working at some startups, and they didn't, they kind of went under. And to be honest, that's a great experience, to be honest, because that gave me the whole learning of right, these things they come, they pop up, they try, and they find, they get some investment, and they try and fit a market, and sometimes it doesn't work. So I was kind of slightly immune to it because I was just like, oh, this is just all new. And I was kind of happy for something to end and move on to the next thing. And it was a good experience. But yeah, I'm working at a company now that's doing really well. And that's yeah, kind of exciting in its own way, seeing something grow and people come, flocking to a new thing that you've built. I mean, it's pretty exciting, really.
Mm.
You mentioned you went to uni. How did you get into software development? Did
Yeah.
you have an interest in computers going through school and then go
Yeah.
on to study computer science?
Yeah, well, I didn't quite manage to study computer science. I was told by a teacher that it might be a little bit beyond me when I was about 16.
Jesus.
I know, but I think that maybe that's half the reason that I was like, you know what? No, okay, I'm going to do this. But
Mm.
the thing I really loved doing as a kid, yeah, I did like making stuff on computers almost as long as I can remember. The thing that really got me into it was electronic music. I was just from the age of about 14, someone gave me a copy of something called Cubase, which basically allows you to have a recording studio on your laptop. And I just became pretty obsessed with making electronic music, and still am today. Like I'm sat in, I wouldn't call it a studio, but there's kind of keyboards and stuff everywhere. So that was my first passion and realization that I could use a computer to make something. It's not just a device for consuming stuff or playing games or whatever. I could actually do this thing that I loved, which was make stuff on computers. However, um, like the music industry, I kind of realized at a younger age that that's probably not the industry I wanted to be in. Many reasons. It just felt like a really tough industry, hard, and also luck based. Like you can be the best in the world and still, just not get that break or whatever. And that kind of scared me. So I guess around uni, I was had a few programming modules in the course I was doing, and I just kind of had that shift. I was like, okay, I can use that same part of my brain, that same enjoyment, that same passion, but it's going to be in like a growing industry. And at the time, it was about 2009, so kind of apps were starting to kick off. And I don't know, people probably think this about many times in history, but it felt like software and software development was going almost mainstream and huge, and wasn't going to just be another sort of dot-com burst of the 2000s. It was actually, wow, okay, that's where the jobs are going. So I kind of had that realization in 2009, 2010, and it all just aligned really nicely. It was like, okay, that's a skill I have, I can do, and that's an industry that's growing. Boom.
Did you look to get any other sort of qualifications before you went out and started to look for your first places to work, or did you just sort of go in with that enthusiasm?
It was total enthusiasm. The one thing I did, the only thing I did apart from, I did a degree which had some programming in it. So I could kind of be like, well, I've been programming. I had a bit of history knocking websites together. And then in my final year of uni, what I did was I just started freelancing. And I don't know if I'd recommend this, but I was just doing it for free. I was just like trying to build anything for anyone, and not even for very long. I just did that for 3 or 4 months, but just to arm myself going into an interview, to be like, this is what I'm working on right now. That demonstrates like a skill, but B, like I love this. I do this anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like if you give me a job, I'll just put all my energy into that, and I think that really helped.
And how was it getting your first actual job in this industry? What was it about? How was the interview and that sort of stuff?
It was a bit of a classic. I had my best friend, actually. He was a graphics designer, and he worked at a company, an e-commerce company, doing graphics design. And I was just telling him my plan, and he was like, I think we could maybe use someone like you here, because we'd like do a lot of outsourcing, and I keep hearing that maybe we could bring someone in. So there wasn't a job there. So I kind of had to get my hustle on, and I was like, okay, just let me meet with whoever can make that decision, and I'll go and meet them. And I met them once, and then heard nothing. So I badgered them, and then they let me come back, and I just sort of, I don't know what I did, probably just chewed their ear off a bit more. And and then I heard nothing, and then I badgered them, and then they offered me a job. So yeah, I think that's probably a bit of a classic way in for a lot of people, is just A, a friend, and then B, just bug people.
There's a lot to be said for the kind of relentlessly knocking on the door approach. And
right,
I think,
exactly.
That does work sometimes.
Yeah, you do run the risk of kind of them getting annoyed, but that is a risk. Most of the time, they'll just be like, this person really wants this. I can definitely find some use for this person.
Yeah, 100%. And for you, what's like an average day? I mean, do you specialize in front end and back end? Are you a full stack? Like, what's your specialism?
Yeah, so I've kind of done a fair bit of everything, but I do a lot of something called a programming language called JavaScript. So that kind of enables me to do front end and back end. So I can write stuff that's running on servers and connecting to databases, but I can also build user interfaces that you can actually interact with, and mobile apps that you can tap on, and all the rest of it. So I've kind of been lucky there as well. Well, I was lucky, but it was also kind of thought through that JavaScript is actually an interesting language. It was kind of invented in the mid-90s for like early browsers, and is kind of notoriously known as not a very good language, but has also at the same time become the most popular language in the world. And I think my career kind of, when I first started, I was just doing it because that was the only thing I could actually do. I was able to do, and it got the job done for who I needed to do it for. But actually, as my career has progressed, that language has actually progressed as well, from a thing that you could do a small subset of software engineering to now basically you can do almost anything in it. Like, name it, you can do it in JavaScript. So that's been amazing for me. It's allowed me to really focus in on one core aspect, but has also enabled me to keep working on super diverse projects. There's definitely a bit of luck in there. But I also, as well as just one language, I like to kind of learn other things on the side, and that's a super recommended thing. Is don't just do fully one thing. Expand your mind a bit, learn a different language or a way of doing things, and that even if you don't do it in your day-to-day, healthy exercise to do, and will improve your core knowledge.
So for those sort of uninitiated, like myself within the world, is that a kind of specialism that companies look for? Are they companies that use Python, or do they use loads of different languages and you happen to be able to do parts that language is used for? Or how does that whole kind of space of languages and companies fit together?
I think thinking about jobs and when you're looking for candidates, we literally will look for exactly that, which is like a JavaScript developer. So you'll need to know other things along with it, but that would be the headline of like, if you want to get in the industry, this company needs a JavaScript developer, this company needs a Python developer. So yeah, that would be kind of front and center. And then second to that is probably domain knowledge. So we need a JavaScript developer that's really good at building user interfaces and understands maybe the financial industry a bit. So that would be something your core, basically.
So you kind of build up from the language, and then certain
Totally.
other aspects are built onto it. If you're looking for jobs, so you could be a Python guy, but you could also have a really good background in marketing or an interest in marketing, and that would be something that would be desirable.
Totally, exactly. Okay. That sort of thing. So you take, that is definitely the way to see it. As at the bottom level, you got your language. On top of your languages, you'd probably have your different disciplines, like sort of UI, machine learning, native development, and you would need to choose an appropriate language that kind of overlaps with that. Yeah, and then on top of that, it's actually kind of domain knowledge, industry understanding, and these sorts of things.
Okay. And so for you on a day-to-day, what are you doing? What kind of things are you building? What kind of things are you having to think about?
Yeah, for me, it changes a lot. I guess there's two components, because I do engineering management as well. So a lot of my time is taken up with managing and mentoring and this sort of thing. So it's split between that, and also I do day-to-day, sit down and write code. So actual talk to people around the business, decide what features we want to build, which is basically based on talking to users. So we've got people that will go out and speak to users. Okay, we want to build this feature. We'll chat it through. How hard is that going to be? What if we build something slightly similar, but it will only take half the time? Okay, and those sorts of decisions, and you help with those sorts of decisions. And then you're going to sit down and you have to actually write the code, put it together, deploy it, and push it out, basically. So that is kind of and then once something's gone out, it's all about reviewing it and starting the process again. What did the users think of it? Okay, can we improve it? It's kind of that's the loop, really.
So I suppose at that point you can continue with that same company for quite a while and just keep bringing out new versions, fixing potential bugs. But at that point, is it quite often that a lot of the team disperse to go work on, go try a different development or something?
Yeah, I guess you could only do that for so long, is kind of working on the same thing. One way to switch up, it's a good point. There's lots of ways to switch up. One is if the company's big enough, you could move on to a different product in the team. So for example, say I'm building a live streaming thing, but actually I want to go work on a native app, or maybe some like e-commerce part of the site, which we have. Yeah, that would be a way to switch it up, go work on different features. And some people just like to switch up the core language. It's like, I've done JavaScript for like 6 months now. I want to go and write some Python. And that's another way you can, switch it up. Or, change companies completely. Change careers, maybe.
And for you, what are some key personality traits that you think are crucial for a software developer?
Yeah, good question. I think the big one for me, and I see it in all the successful developers, is an open-mindedness. I think that's the best way to sum it up. It's kind of this belief that anything can be done, and anything can be done differently. And just because something's been done X, Y, or Z over and over again, it's the people that can think laterally and go, I can actually see a different way to solve this problem that requires, costs half the money or something like that. And that sort of open-mindedness is great. It also helps with learning, because as we kind of said, that the industry is changing quickly and the companies change, but also the technologies that those companies are built on changes quickly as well. And you have to be able to have an open mind to learn the new stuff. You don't want to get obviously carried away with just learning new stuff. You need to implement at some point, but being able to see what's new, see the best bits of it, take the best bits and implement them. I think in all of the really good software engineers that I've seen, that open-mindedness is big. On top of that, one thing I think that can get overlooked maybe from the outside is how creative it is. It was definitely the thing that drew me to it, that it's not, I mean, it's so easy if you took a picture of a software engineer to think they're like typing characters onto a keyboard and then like ones and zeros appear. And that just does seem like fundamentally quite dull, but it definitely isn't that. It's definitely closer to an art form, and there's just infinite ways you can do something, and it's up to you to try and solve the problem in the most sensible, elegant, understandable way, basically. And I think resilience as well is the other huge one. Like when things go wrong, the people that can not be, by go wrong, I mean like when systems go down and you've like broken everything and there's tens of thousands of people getting angry and your company's losing money. I think resilience to that situation is amazing. It's another good trait I've seen in engineers I don't think I wouldn't put myself in this category, but in that situation, they seem to go calmer than normal. It's like, I don't understand how they're doing that. I would be freaking out, and I try not to freak out or show that I'm freaking out, but some people seem to be going into a Zen calm mode and get things fixed, which I think if you can do that, that's a hell of a trait to have.
Obviously the industry's growing constantly, and there's a high demand for people to get involved with it. Over your time in the industry, have you seen people coming in from lots of different backgrounds? Not all the traditional go to university, get that coding good degree or computer science, but people switching industry to come into software now? Yeah,
100%. That's a huge thing recently, which is basically coding bootcamps, which is exactly what you're describing, where the classic one, and I saw it like this almost exact situation multiple times, was someone who worked in probably like a digital agency, maybe on like the marketing side. And they would kind of they'd have like in-house developers, and they kind of see these developers who seem to have basically these pretty sweet jobs, getting paid well. They seem to all really enjoy it. They seem to all leave on time and all this sort of thing. And they seem to be all having fun doing it. So I've seen a lot of people and worked with a lot of people who basically, those sorts of people, maybe they've been doing it 10, 15 years. And what they do is, and this is a reasonably new thing, is a coding bootcamp, which is 3 months where you just go and you work constantly learning to code, basically from scratch. And the idea of these things is they'll take you from, if you know nothing about software development, building apps or whatever, they'll take you from that to at least a junior level engineer that's potentially employable by companies. And then it's kind of up to you, and they'll train you on the interviews and stuff, but it's then up to you to try and get through the door. And if you can impress at that point, I've been involved with totally hiring people that have done that, and in 3 months gone from 0 to software engineer, which I think is amazing, because that just again comes back to, if you've got a passion that's going to make you commit like that, to like give up your job, go and do something straight for 3 months. I mean, that says volumes on its own. And then if they're good technically, I mean, it's a win-win, definitely.
So you mentioned you've been involved in the hiring process at some point. Now, how is this done within the world of tech? I'm sure there's a load of different ways, but are you going through new sort of tech portals to find people, or are you using specialist recruitment to hire maybe more senior level? How's that all working out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I've never really had to do too much of the finding of and vetting of the initial candidates. It's more been like, once we've got someone with some potential, putting them through the interview process, which is quite interesting in tech, and I can definitely go through that. But yeah, I know what you mean. A lot of people nowadays, to be honest, use their socials for this sort of stuff. Like, you see companies all the time, and good companies that you would probably want to work at, who are just putting their jobs online. It's like, reply here or DM me. We've got a sweet job going at X, Y, or Z startup. We've just had a whole bunch of money come in. Like, who's up for it? And good jobs do seem to appear that way. What I've been involved in, more is we've got a HR department that's putting jobs online in the reasonably usual places, and on the company websites and stuff, and then vetting and trying to just get a reasonable pool of people who seem decent, and then putting them through basically the tech interview process.
So what's that process like?
Yeah, I guess there'll be loads of ways of doing it, but it's actually been the same in the last 3 places I've been. So it's quite interesting. So it'll start with, and actually starts with, a technical coding exercise. So that is the first thing you're doing, is like, here is a problem. Can you solve it with code? Which is quite interesting. So I was talking to someone the other day who works in a completely different industry, and they were saying the exercise is usually at the end in their industry. It's like you would give someone interviews, and would never ask them to do a big exercise or task at the beginning. It would kind of be at the end once you've gotten close. But in tech, I don't know why, maybe because it's so easy to just send someone a bit of code and say, could you please add this feature or something like that. But it's done at the start, and that kind of vets the initial people. So you basically, it's quite a nice thing to do. The response will come back, and then a few developers will look it over and go, okay, does that kind of match with how we would do it? What's their style here? What's their attention to detail?
Okay.
Is there anything, have they gone over and above? Have they impressed? And that would be stage 1. And then after that, you would be into a bit more of a standard interviewing face-to-face process, really.
So you want to see they can do the job, and then you want to know if the person's going to fit the team, basically.
That's a really good way of looking at it. It's like, if you can't write the code that we need you to write, it's like good. It just saves everyone's time, right? At that point. And
for you, what would be the 2 biggest positives working in this industry?
Yeah, well, we've kind of mentioned it, but the growth of the industry itself, which is really nice, because that is what I identified when I got started, that being involved with something that's growing is kind of where you want to be. And that in itself is going to give you a whole bunch of opportunity. I mean, I know people working in slightly more declining industries, and it's not very nice. Everything's more to do with cutbacks and what can we avoid doing. In tech, it's nice, it's growing, it's expanding. So the growth of the industry itself is super, super big positive that I just think has compounding effects on everyone that works in it, which
There's
is great.
definitely so many industries like that not to blame tech, but tech is changing and getting rid of a lot of admin positions, and people aren't needed to do these jobs when you can just write a piece of code that will easily or make the job easier for people, so you need less people.
Exactly. Totally.
And being on that side, that you're creating this tech, is the right place to be, probably.
Yeah, well, you're totally right. I am speaking about positives purely from my own point of view.
Yeah.
There's the other side of the coin to that. So yeah, I mean, I guess from my point of view, the growing thing, the creativity is great. I love that I get to make stuff. It's really simple, but I've been doing it like straight for 10 years professionally, and years before that, but I just still enjoy every day getting up and making something. It's I find it fun still, and I think that's if that floats your boat, then it's a perfect industry to be in.
That's all anyone really wants, isn't it? Get up in the morning and sort of be excited for work. Not every day's gonna be fantastic, but you still get to do something you love. That's the goal.
Totally. I wake up and everyone feels a bit groggy when they wake up, and I think, oh, is today the day where that doesn't wear off and I'm just over it? But it hasn't happened yet, so I appreciate that.
On the flip side of this, though, what would be some less favorable aspects of this industry?
It's a good question. We were just mentioning there about other people losing their jobs. There's some very interesting developments recently in terms of developer jobs getting automated. So there's obviously a lot of machine learning tech that's taking over lots of things, but there's actually been some quite big announcements of software for developers to actually have their jobs taken away. So I think that's something we've got to watch. And there is a bit of a feeling that it was kind of thought years and years ago that the things that would be automated would be like all the manual stuff and just have robots do stuff. But I think the feeling is changing that digital things are actually, and information is actually the stuff that's becoming easier to, if there's jobs around that, easier to automate. You think of like automated AI content creation and things like that, which are definitely in their infancy. But there's now something released by a company called GitHub called Copilot, which is basically, it's a clever name that makes you think it's not stealing your job, but it's the idea that it will help you write the code. But you can literally say to it, give me a line of code that, you know, gets me information from Twitter, and you can talk to it almost in sort of like a human English non-programmer way, and it will go and generate the code for you. Obviously it's not perfect, it's totally early days, but it's super interesting to see that and see what effect that might have on the developer workforce.
So it potentially removes the need for the competency of the software developer, and it means somebody like myself who has no idea what they're doing could say to it, hey, look, I want to pull data from Twitter, I want to pull data from Instagram, and I want to build this. Go and write the code.
Exactly, and it will do that. The thing is, there is a downside that you won't understand that code. So imagine the situation where it kind of half writes it but doesn't get it right. You as a non-developer would still be stuck. But it's pretty impressive that you as a non-developer could potentially do that.
Wow. Well, hopefully that's a few years off there.
I mean, there are lots of things that go into being a software developer that aren't just writing code. This is the thing. A lot of the job is understanding what code you should write. Do you know what I mean? It's about understanding the requirements, speaking to actual human beings who say, oh, I want it to do this. They never tell you in perfect English. A lot of the time they don't even know themselves. So it's about digging down like that. And I've yet to see a computer even come close to understanding anything like that. So I think we're okay. We're okay for a bit.
So working within the tech space, obviously you've seen a lot of tech come and go, new developments, you know, the next big things happen or they fizzle out. But from your point of view, there's a big technology sort of making waves at the moment called blockchain. Now, I don't know if you're particularly familiar with blockchain or its applications, but is that something that's sort of, do technologies that come into the tech space always sort of pique your interest? Do you look into them and how do you feel about them?
Well, personally, it's a thing that I love doing, which is just seeing what new tech is out there. Blockchain is, I actually looked at it years and years ago. It was exactly what you described. It was one of the things that kind of just fleeted across my radar. I sort of tried to build a little thing with it, you know, watch some videos, saw what was possible. And then I'm pretty bad for getting bored quite quickly, which I think is a good thing because it keeps me curious. But I do go over lots and lots of new bits of tech. And I'm kind of obsessed with doing that. I mean, the thing I'm doing right now is Bitcoin bots, which is just like a fun little, it will come to nothing, right? But I'm just building this little bot that is kind of like automatically tracking the value of Bitcoin and trying to figure out if you should make buy or sell trades at certain points. Cool. But these, I mean, to be honest, that's the thing I love doing most is these, I would almost call them silly little side projects.
So what's something that's not in the job description, but you probably have to deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah, good question. I think something that is becoming more apparent, and I guess this is maybe not, it's definitely not industry specific, but it seems to be, and I'm becoming more and more aware of it, but it's the burnout that can happen in industry that you have to be able to deal with. It's a huge one in terms of, I think it comes from basically software development. You are doing mental gymnastics, you know, sort of 8-9 hours a day, and it's praised and it's seen as a great thing, and you're building stuff and it's all great. But I think the knock-on effect of the burnout that can occur there is something, and being able to deal with that is a great thing that is just, it's never talked about like at the interview level, right? This sort of like your mental capacity and the psychological effect of all this stuff. And I think it's an interesting one that's just never really mentioned. It's funny because it's not in the job description, but the tech industry is quite good at talking about and being open about stuff, just not when you're hiring, I guess. That sort of stuff doesn't come up.
Obviously, you're the software world, you sort of don't fleet from place to place, but it's fairly fluid in where you go. How do you make sure moving from one location to another, you're able to get that job, you're trying to stand out above a competitive market?
Yeah, I guess in the past it's been my trick would always be to bring up these sort of side projects in interviews, because again you're demonstrating like a passion beyond the day job, which I think just seems to fire people up in the industry. So I would always be mentioning that stuff. And if I was going for a job at a company, say media organization, I just make sure that my side project before that was something, you know, relevant. So building some sort of, I don't know, maybe like a news website or some interesting twist on that. So that's a great way to just stand out above the crowd. I think the other one that's quite big, and I've only just started doing it now, but really enjoying, is also building a community. So I do a lot of, or have done lots of sharing knowledge online, and you know, newsletters and YouTube and stuff like that, all complete failures, but good experiences and great things to do that I would recommend to anyone. But recently I've just been trying to find a platform where I can do that consistently, and I've been doing a lot on Twitter and meeting a lot of people there, and I think that's the tech community is amazing there, and I can see that being a real great way to stand out above the crowd, having a presence there, contributing there, and also meeting potential, you know, people that might want to take you on, who can see your stuff and you actually engage with in a deeper way than rather just turning up for an interview and being, you know, a random off the street.
And would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
Short answer, yes, 100%, 100%. There's definitely a few things that, it's the classic. It's like, what would you tell your 10-year younger self? And I think I would definitely go into the industry. It actually worked out exactly how I hoped it had. I hoped it would in terms of the industry's growth. It's turned out how I hoped it would in terms of allowing me to be creative and have and enjoy that sort of stuff. But what I would probably change with hindsight myself is maybe a better work-life balance, which I thought my work-life balance was good, and I don't think it's terrible. But I think just getting away from screens is just absolutely crucial. I think they're just like, laptops are just big distraction devices that, you know, stimulate your brain, and I think we've got to be aware of that and move away from them as much as possible. So I would just say to my younger self, like, to go into the industry, it's great, but just, you know, get outdoors more, like do more sport, you know, go swimming, you know, go hiking, all that sort of stuff, and just do whatever is the polar opposite to staring at a screen, which is a great career if you do it right, and I really enjoy what I do, but there are downsides. I think it's quite an unnatural thing to do. Like, obviously we're not designed to sit at desks and look at lights 8-9 hours a day, so I think it's all about how you balance that, and yeah, keep it healthy.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on, James. It's been
No worries.
really interesting hearing all about the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Where can people find you, reach out, see what you're up to?
Yeah, I think the best thing is Twitter, which is James_A_Rob. Yeah, find me there. Follow
Brilliant.
along.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Cheers.